Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. This is our August mixer, but you never know it was August because it feels very pleasant out here, doesn't it? Very nice.
It's just here.
It's just here. Yeah, just in this area here. We geo-fenced this area right here. I'd like to thank SMUD for being our premier mixer sponsor this evening. And I'd also like to take this time to recognize a few folks. We have, let's see. On our chamber board, we have Susie Davies with us tonight. She can hear the applause. She's out at the bar. There she is. There she is. We have from the Director of Tourism, Jody Franklin. We have our Auditor Controller, Joe Harn, who's also at the bar. He can hear you. Let's see. We also have our Membership Director, Kathy Zuber. I see we've got some roses here this evening, ladies. An event like this is never complete unless we have roses with us. So it's so nice to have you with us. We have some ambassadors for the chamber. Can you raise your hands too? All right. Thank you, folks. At this time, I'd like to present the American River Conservancy with their membership plaque. They've been a member since January, I believe. Was it January? I believe it was January. But we are giving them a plaque this evening. So welcome to the chamber.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's wonderful being here.
And at this time, I'd like to introduce Alan Ergott. I'm sorry. It's almost as bad as Esposito, but to present this evening's program.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for all of you for coming on in August. This isn't the most scenic month here at Wakamatsu, but it was available. So thank you for braving the heat and coming to learn a little bit more about the history of this phenomenal site. You know, I think all of you being probably in El Dorado County for years and years, some of you decades and decades know, of course, that probably the foundational event in El Dorado County history is the discovery of gold by James Marshall in 1848, January 1848, about a mile and a half north in Coloma. And that's been, of course, landmark with a state park there. And that discovery of gold led to what has been referred to frequently as the largest mass migration of mankind in human history. And a part of that migration included Francis Veerkamp and his wife Louisa, and a sister of Louisa, Mrs. Tobner, Anna Tobner, and his husband, Charles Grainer. And they came out in 1852 by wagon from Missouri. And the Veerkamp family settled right at the base of Thompson Mountain, which is right underneath the sun to the west, about a mile away. And Mr. and Mrs. Charles Grainer settled a 160-acre farm here, that you're on the site you're standing from. And they became married in 1853. They built the first house, which was a small 3-room house, which is essentially the size of the living room where all the food is in. If you look on the ceiling, you'll see marks of walls on the ceiling, and there was a parlor, a bedroom, and then a kitchen service porch. And that was the whole house. In the Grainers planted grapes. They raised cattle, pigs, chickens, fruit, vegetable crops, and they started making wine in the basement. They had children, and they needed to expand the house. And so 1856, they expanded the house to the size of the farmhouse that you see right now. And they were very successful. Charles Grainer had a winery, made wine in the basement. If you haven't been down the basement, in my opinion, that's the best room. It's a fabulous room. It's very large. And it's kind of the farm refrigerator. It stays about 55 degrees even during the month of August. It's pretty darn cool down there during the day. But Charles Grainer made wine. He actually made brandy and sold that not only to the miners, but also to the farmers in the area. And his family kept on expanding. He had a couple of daughters and a son, and by about 1869, they decided to move to San Francisco and buy a hotel. And they sold this house and farm to a very, very interesting crowd. And that's why we call this the Wakamatsu Tea and Silk Colony Farm. I'm going to read a short letter from the state historic officer, a fellow by the name of Wayne Donaldson. And this is a letter that was written to me back in 2008. He says, thank you for your letter regarding the Wakamatsu property in Gold Hill and your request that I certify the National Register eligibility of this property. I can state enthusiastically that the Gold Hill property can and should be listed in the National Register of Historic Places at the national level of significance. This is almost certainly the oldest property in North America associated with Japanese immigration. It is also probably the only North American property to be linked directly to the immigration of samurai during the Meiji Restoration, which was Japan's civil war back in the 1860s, late 1860s. The place is more remarkable for the existence of an 1860s home actually occupied by the Wakamatsu settlers, mulberry trees planted by the silk farmers, and the gravestone of Oke Ito, almost certainly the oldest Japanese immigrant grave in the United States. The state of California has recognized the state's significance of the site since a California landmark plaque was dedicated there by Governor Ronald Reagan in 1869. So right at the edge of our farm, right next to the Gold Trail School, there's a small memorial garden there. And Ronald Reagan flew up by helicopter from Sacramento, landed here, and dedicated the centennial landmark or dedication of the centennial or 100-year anniversary of the Wakamatsu farm. And this coming year of 2019 will be the 150th anniversary. And the American River Conservancy, and I hope the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses of El Dorado County will help us celebrate the 150th anniversary of the founding of the first Japanese colony in North America. Let's talk a little bit about that colony. First of all, there were 22 samurai that we knew came over in May of 1869 on the USS China. It was a steamboat with sails, a fairly large ship that accommodated a couple hundred people. And they brought with them a farm. They brought tea, silk, worms, all kinds of different trees, wax trees, rice, all different kinds of plants. And so many of those plants became mainstream here in California. Japanese rice is a very particular kind of rice and became the rice most adaptable to California. So the huge rice industry we have in California is thankfully based on the Japanese species of rice crop. The American River Conservancy got involved in the acquisition of this property because, quite frankly, nobody else wanted to take it on. We had partners, certainly. We had money coming from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, a little bit of money coming from the National Resource Service. But by and large, we bought this property through private donations. And we've been building it up ever since. It's kind of a project where you just kind of pick yourselves up by your own bootstraps. And the farmhouse was, when we bought it in 2010, was just about ready to fall down. And we were able to get a good-sized grant, $500,000 grant, to just stabilize the structure. We lifted it up on steel beams, tied it down to the rock foundation with steel rods. We had to rebuild the northern half of the house, and we're in the process of building trails and replacing septic systems, and we're hoping at this point in time to get a commercial kitchen in this facility so that we can actually host dinners, farm dinners, here on the Wakamatsu farm. It is a living farm. It has some of the best soil in El Dorado County, And as a result, we have made a push and a fact to keep young families employed as organic farmers on this farm. And you'll be hearing from one of the farmers tonight. We like to think that El Dorado County will adopt this equally as much as the Goldbug Mine or the Marshall Gold State Park or any other historical site. And we have so many here in El Dorado County. But this is essentially the Plymouth Rock. It is the first colony site for the Japanese. The first Japanese American was born on this farm. And it is, of course, the resting place of the first Japanese woman to die on American soil. So it's worth knowing about. The history is fascinating, particularly the samurai side of the history. And I hope that if you haven't been here before, that you'll take a little bit of time, maybe take a look at our visitor's guide. It looks like this. It has a kind of a quick history of the Wakamatsu program. We have books. One of our historians, docents, Herb Tanimoto, has written a book. Thank you, Herb, so much for putting your book on the table. It's a great book. I think you'll enjoy it. There are others out there as well. The Samurai of Gold Hill is one of my favorites. I read it to my children 18 years ago. And it's just fascinating. It speaks to the fact that California is really a state of minorities between the Mexicans that were here, the Spanish, the Chinese, the Argentinians, the Chileans, the Kanakas from Hawaii. I mean, it's just so much of our history, our California history, is wrapped up in the phenomenal breadth of cultures that we have in this state. And for one, I really appreciate that a lot. It shows up in not only our citizenry, but in the talents, multiple talents that we have across the board in this state. So with that, I think I'm going to turn the mic over to Melissa Lobach, who is our Wakamatsu coordinator. Melissa Lobach.
Thank you, Alan. And before I tell you about our WakaFest 150, I want to thank you all for coming very much. I appreciate you supporting the farm by showing up and experiencing our first chamber mixer out here. And I also want to extend my heartfelt thank you to the volunteers who helped put tonight together. If there's one thing that's true about Wakamatsu, it's that we would not be here without the dedication and all the hard work and hours that volunteers put in out here. So I'd like to have a round of applause for our volunteers. So June 6th through 9th of 2019 is when we'll be celebrating Wakamatsu's 150th anniversary. And as Alan said, there's a plaque down there at Gold Trail School that says that the colonists arrived here on June 8th, 1869, and on June 8th, 2019, it will be exactly 150 years later. That's a Saturday. So that'll be our big day. And the idea behind this festival is to celebrate 150 years of Japanese American heritage, arts, and cuisine. So we're really plugging this one hard so that it's an international festival and we can enjoy food, art, music performances, demonstrations, discussions, competitions, and more. The farm here has already had, I think, 3 festivals, and we've done a similar thing through those years. But I'm really hoping that this attracts up to 4,000 people from all throughout the world. And I'm really hoping that our community will come together and help us make this happen. The purpose of WakaFest 150 is to broaden our community and international awareness about Wakamatsu Farm. So our county has abundant agricultural, cultural, and historical sites, and this is one of the most unique ones. And the idea is to showcase our county for the world, if possible, and really open up some more exposure to Asian cultures, which would be wonderful, I think, for all of us. If you're into something and you really enjoy doing it, whether it's gardening, whether it's art, whether it's cooking, whether it's native plant gardening, if it's hiking, if it's bird watching, And anything that goes along with being a California naturalist, we have that available out here at this farm. Many opportunities for volunteering. And everyone welcome Herb Tanamono. Herb is one of our very dedicated volunteers, and I consider him to be one of the head docents and historians and curators for our little museum inside. So Herb's written a book, and he's here to tell you about it.
Hi, thank you, Melissa. I'm a person who's very, very interested in history. I get really turned on by history, but I realize it might not be to everybody's appetite, you know. I remember back in school, history was boring. So I was thinking to get the word out about Wakamatsu and get people interested in the history. And I love to write. What if I could write a historical fiction book based on what we know about Wakamatsu, using the real people who were here? There were samurai here, the 22 Japanese. There was John Henry Schnell. Think of John Henry Schnell. He was sort of like the guy in The Last Samurai, Tom Cruise, you know, Nathan Algren. That kind of person was actually here. And so there were really, an OK, of course, the beautiful OK, who is legendary. They were all here, but how could I make this interesting to people? And I figured out the best way is to write a historic fiction where I write about the real people and weave a story around it from what we know. I'm a docent here. I have been since 2011 when we started doing tours. And I was assigned historical research. Me and Wendy, who's over there, Wendy Guglieri. So we interviewed some of the Verkamps even. Pearl Verkamp, who's 95 years old, I think, when we interviewed her. We wanted to make sure we got the information that she had. And she actually knew where this samurai, Matsunosuke Sakurai, was buried. And American River Conservancy will, in the next few months, mark his resting place in the Coloma Cemetery. So to give him the honor that he deserved. He worked on this farm, this beautiful farm, for 30 years after the Wakamatsu colony failed. So, and he was a trusted employee of the Verkamp family. There might even be some Verkamps here today, but it's nice to recognize him. So this book is for sale. It's $20. It took me about a year and a half to write it, and it was something that just kind of screamed at me every night to write, you know, take an hour and write. You know, it just wanted to be written. It was out there, and it just needed to be written down, and that's basically what I did. From my time here at Wakamatsu, the walls seemed to be talking to me, the rocks at O'Kay's grave. I learned a lot just listening, and I put it down to words. So without further ado, I think the next up is Melissa, one of our farmers, to talk about the crops they have and the techniques they use. Thank you.
My husband and I, he's out probably doing our evening tours right now. Lease 95 of these acres out here. We lease across the street, that open space we just got a lease on. We're going to begin managing it full-time this coming year, 2018. And then we also lease pasture back from the road. You can't really see it when you go along the road, but it's out there. And we specialize in livestock. We don't come from farming backgrounds. We come from other backgrounds in the city, and it's kind of a long story how we got interested in farming, but it's sort of similar to how the couple who runs the vegetable farm got into it. We were really interested in being able to make a positive change in our community and in the world in general, but in a particular location. And we wanted to do something that would provide something really concrete and beneficial to the community that we lived in and to our own family and to the families that we provide food for. So we raise livestock, and we do it in a way that uses modern technology to mimic natural cycles. So we have a lot of electric fence, and we are moving our animals frequently throughout the year, and trying to establish more perennials in our pasture. And I could totally go on about the science, just like I'm sure Herb could go on about the history of the place, but it's an honor to be here and kind of continue on in that tradition. This land has been managed for thousands and thousands of years, not just by forces of nature, but by humans. If you think about the Nisenan being here prior to folks coming from other areas, Nisenan were actively managing this land. This land has not been unmanaged by humans, for basically, as long as we can record the history of the Native Americans being here, it's been actively managed. So it's really an honor to be here and be able to take care of part of this property and continue in that vein of making sure that we are increasing biodiversity in the plants as well as the wildlife, and being able to provide something that's really nutritious and with our products hopefully be able to build community.
I wanted to let you know that if you're interested in coming back to Wakamatsu and finding out more about the history, then I would encourage you to come back on either one of our open farm days or for a public tour. And you can always find a schedule of those on the ARC's website by clicking on the events tab. So feel free to come back and bring your family and your friends. We also do private tours as well. So if you're interested in knowing more about any of those, you can let me know, and I'd be happy to tell you about them too. Open Farm Days happen starting again in September. It's the first Saturday of the month, and it's about 4 hours just to come out here and wander around the farm on your own and check things out. There's docents and naturalists that are posted around the different sites that can give you some interpretation about what's going on and what's gone on at that particular location. So feel free to come back and feel free to share it with your friends.